think a lot of people noticed how interested I was that Ben Wittes was the first person there outside John Bolton's house when the FBI came a-knocking. It's so interesting. There's so much to unpack there. But you know, as you watch, I really have been trying to watch all the coverage, you know. I've been watching CNN. They're so ignorant of even what's been widely publicized. A lot of people, even on Fox, they're ignorant too. They seem to think that George Conway was the first guy there, and I think that's what Ben Wittes wants them to think. Ben Wittes is kind of a master of deception. Maybe not a master, but he's trying to be. He's a practitioner of it for sure. Whether he's a master or a loser remains to be seen. But this is the lawfare way, right? George always is like, oh, why? He used to say, why doesn't Jason talk to Robin Grits? Why doesn't Jason do this? Why isn't Jason doing that? Why isn't Jason talking about this or that person? And then, you know, it worked for a little while. He'd get me talking to Robin Grits, and I guess the purpose of that was, you know, so when she gets revealed to be a fat, drunk FBI loser, they can say, why is Jason talking to all these fat, drunk FBI losers? I mean, that's what they did with Okie Marshall Richards, right? George's brother is still pushing that nonsense in court where he says, oh, you know, Jason was interviewing this FBI informant. I didn't know he was an FBI informant. So then he tries to, you know, correct himself by saying, oh, you know, after this date or whatever. Why did Jason keep? They're the ones who revealed what that guy's identity was. I never knew who he was. They introduced me to him. They revealed that he was Okie. They told me he was Richard Stone. Then they revealed that he was Okie Marshall Richards. Only then did it come out that the Washington Post had published that he was an FBI informant who jammed up that guy, Ray Looker. Very, very similar to what happened with the Michigan guys who were accused of kidnapping Gretchen Whitmer. The FBI loves to do that. It's weird. It's such a criminal organization, such a setup job in and of itself. Look, that's IBM now. When did that become IBM? That was Schwab-Abu Dhabi. Charles Schwab investment thing now is IBM. But Ben Wittes, there outside John Bolton's house, what the hell was he doing there? He was the first person there at 7 or 8 o'clock in the morning. And even he admitted that the cops said, hey, how did you know what's going on? And Charlie Hurt, I like Charlie Hurt, but he was like, oh, maybe George Conway is John Bolton's neighbor. How about looking into that before you say it on the news? I don't know if that's correct. I definitely don't think that's the reason he was there. He was there because he's closely associated with Ben Wittes, and Ben Wittes doesn't want his fingerprints all over this, I suspect, because he's highly guilty of something very bad. So the question today is, has Ben Wittes been advising John Bolton for the past 5 years or more? Ben Wittes, lawfare criminal. That's right, criminal. Come sue me, Ben Wittes. You're not going to be able to prove in court that you're not a criminal. And by the way, Ben Wittes' biggest focus, as far as I'm concerned, has been not being in court with me. He's trying to get injunctions to prevent me from suing him or being in court with him, while my time is tied up with George's idiot brother. Oh, I forgot to load my latest AI example of George's brother undergoing a psychiatric evaluation. If you're not following me on X, there's a lot of fun stuff that gets posted there. Go over to x.com at JG_CSTT and you can check out the latest video of George's brother. But the reason why I suspect Ben Wittes has been advising John Bolton, Ben Wittes, I'm very interested in what he was saying in that nervous live stream. It's almost like being nervous, it's like booze, right? It sort of gets people talking. saying things maybe they otherwise wouldn't say, and certainly shouldn't. But he's talking about John Bolton's book. He's like, I don't know if that's John Bolton's house. John Bolton's address is published right there in the caption on the criminal action against him. That seemed unusual to me. Why did the government publish his home address? Weird. But it is. I'm sure Ben Wittes knew that was his address. Either that or it was a lucky coincidence. But he's like, I don't know if it is or isn't John Bolton's house, but this seems like the way the FBI usually raids people. And he goes on to talk about the writing of the book. I had forgotten about all of this, but you know, John Bolton wrote that book, The Room Where It Happened, all about when he was a national security advisor. And I think of particular interest is what John Bolton was doing relative to Trump's activities concerning Ukraine. Because remember, these people all want this war in Ukraine, and I allege Nina Jankowicz played a substantial role in starting the war in Ukraine. She should be prosecuted as a criminal, and she should feel guilt from now until her death over the hundreds of thousands of lives that war has cost. She's a despicable person, horrible, wretched. Oh, look at this quite regal dog up there, king of the hill, sitting up there, that fluffy white dog. But anyway, these people are evil. And anyway, Ben Wittes, he's talking all about this book, The Room Where It Happened, and the controversy specifically surrounding the publication of the book and the process that Bolton had to go through with the Department of Defense or whoever it is, you know, CIA, probably all of them, to say, okay, no classified information in the book. They determined that the book did contain classified information. And so everybody presumes that's what they were looking for at John Bolton's house. I don't know about that. I mean, again, the classified information could just be stuff that he heard in a meeting and wrote about in the book. It doesn't have to be that he published documents there in the book that were documents that he took that he's still hanging on to. In all likelihood, they're just looking for his laptops and his devices that he's maybe communicating with Ben Wittes on, and trying to go in there and just communicating with Ben Wittes on and trying to go in there. So I went this. John Bolton was prosecuted. It's a big case. There's a lot to look at there. And keep in mind, even if you were in the case, I'm finding out things about my own case years later, but this thing is from June 20th, 2020. And let's just look at what Judge Royce Lambert said in his memorandum opinion here, just in this conclusion. The defendant, Bolton, has gambled with national security of the United States. He's exposed his country to harm and himself to civil and potentially criminal liability. But these facts do not control the motion before the court. The government has failed to establish that an injunction will prevent irreparable harm, and its motion is accordingly denied. Now, some people will read that and say, oh, Royce Lambert, that's BS, blah, blah. But no, actually, that is the way court works. That's a kind of a proper ruling, because what that motion was is the government, the prosecutors, were seeking a preliminary injunction preventing, I mean, again, we'd have to go into the details, but what Royce Lambert, I think they wanted to claw the book back or something like that. Lambert determined, look, we're not going to give you the injunction. Nobody, they hadn't brought a motion to, you know, prosecute him under whatever statute he would have violated, according to the judge there, for having revealed this national security information. The thing that was in front of the judge, and this is similar to what's happening in Goodman versus Allegheny County, in that a judge isn't going to go outside whatever it is that's before them to decide on something that's morally right. He's saying, hey, because you're asking for this preliminary injunction, it doesn't matter, all this other stuff. I mean, even if that other stuff is true and correct, that Bolton did risk national security, it's still not going to stop the harm that's already been done. And so therefore, the book, he's not going to grant the motion. The book is already out, is basically what was going on there. And again, there's a lot of legal back and forth about, who said it was national security information or it wasn't national security information. But in that case, the judge had seen the information. There was this whole in-camera discovery, meaning in the judge's, camera meaning like room in Latin or whatever. I had asked Judge Caproni to view this email in camera, because then it, protects the secrecy of whatever is in there, but it allows the judge to see, in my case, if that email was sent by George's brother or not. And the judge said, no, she's not going to do that. Why would she say that unless she already knew that it was, in fact, seen by George's brother, and she just wanted to dispose of me? But anyway, that's what's going on right there. The thing that's interesting is, so that's June 20th, right? And then here, the Brookings Institution, look at this. What matters most is that Bolton publishes the book before the election, June 18th, 2020, 2 days before that decision comes down. This whole article, now it's not written by Ben Wittes, but again, Ben Wittes, he's closely associated with the Brookings Institution. He was a fellow over there, an odd fellow, not in the strictest sense, but he's a fellow at the Brookings Institution, just like Norm. Norm is a fellow at the Brookings Institution. Lawfare is a subsidiary or something, a related organization. If you were watching last night with Charles, the topic of the Lawfare Institute came up. Now see, these people have their kid, the Guns N' Roses fans, have their kids skateboarding around. It's really not good. Little kid, where are your parents? You letting him skateboard like this on the sidewalk, endangering everybody? Why don't you skateboard where there's a skate park? Dirty look from an asshole, teaching his kids to be assholes. Anyway, if people were watching last night, we were talking about the Lawfare Institute and how it's not registered with the Washington, D.C. Secretary of State. It's not registered with the Illinois Secretary of State, but it's raising money all over the place. That's illegal. This is what I was talking to Ben Wittes about when I confronted him on the street. Now, I did find the determination letter for that thing. It was on the IRS website. Now, look at this P.O. box. This is not personal information. Nobody should do anything to Ben Wittes. But look at that, 33, it matches the zip code of Washington, D.C. That's a coincidence at least. I don't know what that means, but he loves 33, and then the 226. He's got a lot of 33 coding all over everything he does. And to be clear, I'm not saying that's gematria or magic or numerology or anything like that. I think it's an embedded steganographic code, a message to people in the know. People like James Comey, who answer to a higher loyalty. Maybe people in the IRS who don't know Ben Wittes by name, they see that and they say, oh, leave this alone. Because he should be being prosecuted in Washington, D.C. and Illinois, at least, for illegal fundraising with an unregistered nonprofit. That IRS determination letter says that the Lawfare Institute is a 170B1A6 public nonprofit charity where your contributions are tax deductible. And I don't think anybody should give any money to that because, in my opinion, you'd be complicit in illegal activity. They're not supposed to engage in any kind of partisan political stuff, but yet that's all they do. Did people like the look on that asshole's face, how much he wanted to threaten me and yell at me, but with his little kids there, he realized it wasn't something to do? That guy thinks his kid can skateboard all over the sidewalk. The kid doesn't know what he's doing. He hits you in the ankle and breaks your ankle. Then what? Stupid people and their stupid kids. Speaking of stupid people, Zoran Mamdani had a scavenger hunt over here yesterday. I was a little busy, tied up with some other stuff. Didn't have a chance to come over here. But apparently the scavenger hunt was a catastrophe. I don't know. I think anything that guy does is a disorganized catastrophe, but yeah, it seems like John Bolton is in a lot of trouble. You know, the judge already determined that he had, violated whatever. He didn't make a determination as to specifically what statute was violated, but he did say that he put national security at risk. And we got the Brookings Institute urging him to release that book before the election. So this is everything that this crew is focused on doing, is getting other people to do things. That's the Lawfare way, right? And that's why I say George and his brother are part of Lawfare, because they, it's like if you went to the particular like Stanislavski acting school, maybe some acting expert could see how you act or understand your process and know that you're a student of that. There's certain methods. God, it's super hot. Roasting here in the sun. Certain methods that you can just detect. I mean, I've used the analogy before of like a football play. Somebody might be able to see a little league football team, illegal fruit vending. Little league football team might run a play that's the same play that you can run in the Super Bowl. And you can just tell by what's happening. Just like this is jazz, without knowing the song, without knowing the band. It's got a style. It's got a way about it. Same thing with these Lawfare losers. They just have a way of doing things that you can tell just by looking at it. Now, I mean, if you were completely unfamiliar with music and you heard that band, you might not know that's jazz. How do I know it's jazz? I don't even really know. I'm definitely not a music expert, but it's jazz. Same way I can tell all these Lawfare people. I could just tell. So we're gonna see what happens with Ben Wittes and all of his stupid Lawfare friends. Ben Wittes and friends. What do people think about all that? See, because it didn't make sense to me for a long, long time. Why were they expending so many resources trying to destroy me and my show? I mean, it's just virtually irrelevant, or at least it should be. But no, this broad coalition of idiots that includes George's brother, he communicates with Adam Sharp through that email to get the National Academy of Television Arts and Sciences to spend over $2 million suing me to get me to do something that I had offered to do for free, to remove an image from the internet that ultimately they published. I'm not even allowed to publish it anymore, but they've published it in The Hollywood Reporter. That gets way more views than Crowdsource the Truth. So why is that? Why would they republish an image that they allegedly hate in what is obviously a press release to The Hollywood Reporter, written by a guy who went to the same college and the same journalism program and graduated the same year as Adam Sharp? Why would they want to make that republished in an international publication that's still there today while suing me for over $2 million to get me to remove it? Obviously, there's a different purpose. It's not what they're saying on the surface. The fun for kids is breaking the rules. Well, I don't give a shit, because if it winds up breaking your ankle or your wrist, and that's not the kids, that's the parents. He's not breaking the rules, he's following his parents' rules. If his parents told him don't skateboard on the sidewalk, and then he was out skateboarding on the sidewalk by himself, that would be breaking the rules. That's bad parenting is what that is, and it's not LOL. That's a problem, because that kid's gonna grow up to be a selfish asshole like his stupid father who doesn't care about anybody, who's then going to engage in the same kind of activities as Ben Wittes and fucking George and his stupid mentally ill brother, where they don't care what happens to you, they want to do what they want to do. So it's not LOL.
Father at $7 for that is a currency nobody's going to know you have. You open your phone with $1 million,
That dude's got a whole speech going. So there's a lot of lunatics out. It's really a nice summer day, even though summer is almost over. And yeah, so again, I was looking at that whole docket for United States versus Bolton. And look, I didn't get into reading it that much because, like I said, it's very complicated. Lawsuits are complicated. And even if you're a lawyer, and even if you're involved in the case from the beginning, it's hard to understand what's going on. If you go to every hearing, every trial, follow the transcript, read the thing, there's still stuff happening in between the lines. Even in my own cases, like I said, I'm discovering things a year and a half, 2 years after the fact. Sometimes it's too late. That's exactly what they're going for, by the way, making certain things happen, and then it's too late for the other side to react, right? Tish James wants to have Trump in court. Doesn't matter if the laws are fake. If she had succeeded and people said, oh, this guy, he's convicted of fraud and he's a felon and all this and that, don't vote for him, Trump would be screwed right now. I don't know if these appellate courts would be overturning things or if anybody would be paying as much attention to it as they are now. He would be, had he lost the election, he would have been viewed as a former political figure with no political future or whatever, and nobody would really care. Versus now, where he's arguably the most powerful politician in the world in charge of the Department of Justice. And that's not to say that I think that Trump is misusing the Department of Justice. That's also what they want you to think. Right? So this is why Ben Wittes was out there, oh, this place is out of business. This was oh, now it's coming soon, natural market. It was some kind of natural market. Ben Wittes was out there because he was trying to get ahead of the story. And he was trying to convince everyone that this raid on John Bolton was an unjustified, unnecessary weaponization of the law. I did see Mike Lee. I was pleased to see this on Megyn Kelly talking about retribution, but using the word properly. He understands the definition of it. When you commit a crime, retribution for that is being prosecuted and going to jail. It is the proper punishment. People on CNN, dummies like Abby Phillip and other people like that, are conflating retribution with revenge, and they want people to think that retribution is somehow wrong. Retribution for a crime is punishment. And so yes, these people are going to be facing retribution if we have any justice in this country. Same thing with George's stupid brother. It's close. He's busily filing amicus briefs, according to him. I don't think so. See, and like I said, Ben Wittes doesn't want to come up against me. I have not been speaking about George's brother, except for the fact that he's coming at me. You know, when he backs off, I forget about him and I move on to more important things. I'm saying those guys got onto me in the first place because they were trying to get to Charles. And I figured out what they had going with regard to Peter Smith. And we had one of the guys who was listed on that demonstrative pedagogical summary to be developed and released prior to November 8th and dated September 7th, he was commenting on Twitter. I found that interesting. A lot of people are interested in what I'm saying about Ben Wittes being at John Bolton's house. It was really strange. The cops found it strange. I think Ben Wittes is out of his mind nervous. I hope the people in the DOJ are aware of Ben Wittes' role in all of this, because that is a guy who definitely needs to go to jail. What the fuck are you honking at, asshole? I have the light. New Jersey motherfucker. Jesus Christ. Ridiculous. This city is such a hostile place, right? Even people walking with their kids are assholes. That guy was a criminal Uber driver from New Jersey honking at me for crossing with the light. Ridiculous. But everybody's interested in what Ben Wittes was doing at John Bolton's house. Like I said, this thing with John Bolton, it's just the beginning. I think it's going to lead to a lot more. Mike Moore, I noticed, who I really don't talk to at all anymore. He's a suspicious character, isn't he? Oh yeah, somebody from the past related to Mike Moore came up. I wanted to talk about this. Another fucking asshole, a guy named Rahul Manchada. And he also ran his mouth and said some things. He's a little bit of a loser. I don't know that he's worth dedicating too much time to. I was going to show all the text messages that he sent me, but it just gives him more oxygen than he deserves, probably. He's a lawyer that Mike Moore introduced me to in 2020 when after Snyder had withdrawn from the case. And I think he was intended to be the 1-2 punch to put me down for the count. Luckily, I never hired him, and he revealed himself just the other day. I mean, this guy's an absolute loser. And Mike Moore introduced me to him because I needed a lawyer. There was going to be an inquest to decide, you know, how much money I had to pay the Emmys attorneys. It turned out to be $980,000. And the Emmys said to me, look, if you sign this stipulated settlement and agree to never talk about this case and never talk about Adam Sharp again, we'll waive this $980,000. Basically offered me $1 million to shut up and never talk about it again. And I told them to go piss up a rope. Wasn't going to do that. And I knew they had no way of enforcing the judgment, because attempting to do it would unravel their whole plan. They're trying to enforce a judgment against a non-existent entity. And it would also require them to start a new legal action against that entity. Let them come and try it. But it's been 5 years, so I don't even know if it's still enforceable. Point is, this idiot Rahul Manchada, I met him in 2020. And I told him what was going on, and he said, oh yeah, come down to my office and we can talk about it. And he said he wasn't going to charge me for the initial consultation. And then after the meeting, he said, oh, by the way, you know, he was in one of these co-op offices, and he said to me, oh, by the way, I have to pay a fee to rent this conference room, so, you know, can you pay me, I think, $300 or whatever he asked me for. And I mean, I paid him with a credit card, but it was a little bit of a bait and switch, and he's kind of a sketchy guy. Every other time I ever communicated with this loser, lying lawfare lawyer, was just text messages where I was asking him questions and he never gave me an answer. He never helped me. He never represented me in anything, never wrote any briefs for me, never even gave me any advice. I mean, he occasionally would say, oh, I'll introduce you to this person or that person who might help you, but there was never any actual introduction. I never hired anybody. The guy did nothing. And then I ran into him in the movies one time years ago, but I mean, I haven't been to the movies. I went to see that Tom Cruise Mission Impossible movie over the Christmas vacation, but before that, I hadn't been to the movies since the last Spider-Man movie, which was like 4 years ago. And before that, I hadn't, so it's been like 5 years since I've even seen this loser. And I've seen him twice in my whole entire life. And he sent me a bunch of text messages like, oh, do you want to come to a Trump dinner? And I'd be like, sure. And then he'd send me a link to pay like $7,500 for a, like the lowest rung ticket to whatever fundraising dinner. And I never went to any of those. I just never dealt with this guy. So he, a couple of weeks ago, sent me a message. Oh, no, he said, hey, can I borrow $6,000 for child support? He said something like, apparently I need to come up with $6,000 before such and such a date. And it's like, I don't know this guy. I don't know what his problems are, his legal problems are. It's not like we're friends. I mean, $6,000, does he think I have $6,000 to lend around? So I just ignored that. Then the other day, he sent me another message saying essentially the same thing. He needs $6,500. Can you wire it? And he sends me his Bank of America bank account and wiring instructions and everything. And I said, dude, don't fucking contact me again. And he got all pissed off. Started in with the, oh, you're a effing Jew and this and that. It's like, really? Because I won't lend somebody I barely know $6,500 that I'll never see again, obviously. Something's wrong with me. I mean, he went on and on with the anti-Jew stuff. It was crazy. And I said, dude, we barely know each other. He was like, oh, we've been friends for 10 years. And he said to me, oh, I met you through Mike Moore in 2016. And I thought to myself, no, you didn't. You met me in 2020. It's true, it was through Mike Moore, but it wasn't in 2016. And that mistake stuck in my mind. Did Mike Moore become involved in some operation with this guy in 2016 with George and this guy and a crew of people? Because remember, Mike Moore, I thought was my friend, and we did a lot of shows together. And then after the election in 2020, he said he's taking December off, and then I never heard from him again. Almost as if he had fulfilled a contract and now he was done. It's very weird. But this guy, Rahul Manchanda, he seems to think he met me in 2016. Perhaps he has a strong recollection of becoming connected to Mike Moore in 2016. Maybe they all got involved in this Lawfare beat Trump plan. And maybe Mike Moore got jammed up selling hockey videos and now is a pawn of the Department of Justice, and people like Andrew Weissman tell him what he has to do. I don't know. This is speculation. I could be wrong. But the other stuff that I'm telling you about, that's evidence. Sometimes I look at evidence and then I form a hypothesis. That hypothesis is my speculation. You might look at the same evidence and come up with a different conclusion. You're free to do that. But I was very upset with Mike Moore over that. Why doesn't he ask Mike Moore for $6,500? Well, that came out in the arguments with Manchanda, that he was just texting everybody that he knows, asking them for $6,500. I mean, what kind of scrounging loser is that? Sorry, so first he sends me a text saying he needs $6,000. I ignored that. That was 3 or 4 weeks ago. Then maybe 2 weeks ago, he sends me a text saying, what could we do to make money together? And I said to him, well, are you still an attorney? And he said, no. And I said, why not? And he said, oh, retaliation for going against the deep state or something like that. And then I said, well, I mean, why don't you go get your bar license in Washington, D.C.? I hear there's a shortage of lawyers there. And so then he sent me a ChatGPT query that said, if I get disbarred in New York, can I join the bar in New Jersey? And it said no. So he's sort of admitting to me that he's been disbarred. And when you consider how difficult that is, I mean, Stephen Biss didn't get disbarred. All these lawyers going against me doing incredibly unethical stuff didn't get disbarred. So maybe you'll look at that and say, oh yeah, Manchanda, he was fighting the deep state, that's why he got disbarred. No, I think he's a lawfare criminal. That's my opinion. Pure opinion based on looking at this evidence about him that I've seen. And he is like a, he's like a shifty scumbag, like a Ralph Cramden, always trying to make a buck kind of hustler. And I think Mike Moore told me to hire him so that he would become my attorney. And just like Snyder did, he would walk me into some kind of trap. That's another key to lawfare. They want to control your attorney. I'm learning all these different things about lawfare, how they operate. And that's why I'm able to say these things about Ben Wittes. Again, I haven't proven in court that Ben Wittes was advising John Bolton. I just think it's very likely based on the evidence that I'm looking at and what I know about how these lawfare operatives operate. Because when I look at that docket from the United States versus Bolton, it was the Trump DOJ that was trying to prosecute Bolton. And then there's all these motions for extension of time, almost like they knew they were going to cheat and they were confident in their cheating mechanism. And they knew that once Joe Biden got in there, this prosecution would be dropped. So again, the facts didn't matter, the law didn't matter. It was the lawfare aspect of it that mattered. And oh yeah, I forget who else was talking about this. Some other guest on Megyn Kelly was talking about lawfare, and they were talking about, if it's used for political goals. And I'm thinking that is exactly what lawfare is always and only used for, military and political objectives, according to Charles Dunlop Jr., the guy who's credited with codifying and creating lawfare. And remember, lawfare is a specific thing. It's not just malicious prosecution. It's not just bringing a crappy lawsuit against someone. I mean, sure, you could call it that, but lawfare is specifically a 21st century mechanism of war fighting. Oh man, this Fatbird place is already out of business. That came in after the pandemic and it's gone. It's a modern 21st century form of war fighting intended to achieve political and military objectives. That's what Dunlop says. Take him at his word. So I think Mike Moore told me to hire this guy Manchanda so that I could walk into that inquest and be put down for the count from a financial standpoint. Luckily, that didn't work out. Mike Moore has never communicated with me substantially since then. Maybe one or two texts or Twitter DMs, but I mean, he and I were pals, I thought. Was he deceiving me? It always didn't sit well with me that he was supposedly this genius at unraveling scams and schemes, and he got jammed up for selling hockey videos. First of all, that seemed like an incredibly stupid business. And second of all, how could it not be illegal to record somebody else's hockey broadcast and then sell that? It sort of reeked of like these mortgage scams where you have to do this so that and we know that at any moment we could jam you up and prosecute you for this. Because you look at the things that they don't prosecute people for, it doesn't make any sense. And you see Adam Schiff, he's signing documents, boldly claiming now that there's no evidence. It's like, what the hell are you talking about, Adam Schiff? There's evidence all over the place with your signature on it. There's so much evidence, it's crazy. And then I just think the way it goes in court, that's it. They can choose to prosecute or not prosecute anybody at almost any moment. So that's what Ben Wittes is worried about now, is that he knows that Bolton very likely could be prosecuted. By the way, all this talk, frozen up there, all this talk about the statute of limitations, if they're talking about disclosing classified information, that's wrong. That's got a 10-year statute of limitations. So there's no question that that's not over. That could be another reason why Ben Wittes is so upset that he knows there's 3.5 years left and they could all get prosecuted. It could be very bad for Ben Wittes, and that's good for justice. Anyway, that's all I really had to say about that. So thanks everybody for watching. I hope you'll become a sponsor. Remember, a big part of what they've been trying to do is shut down Crowdsource the Truth. So please become a sponsor if you enjoy these broadcasts. Go to subscribestar.com/crowdsourcethetruth or patreon.com/crowdsourcethetruth. Sponsor the show there. You can also go to crowdsourcethetruth.substack.com. See, there's some kind of radio something right over here. I think it has to do with that Kathy Hochul congestion fee, detecting cars or communicating with that system somehow. But if you're not following on X, do that. You can get on x.com @JG_CSTT. Become a subscriber. Have a great day, everybody, except for Ben Wittes and whatever asshole is riding a motorcycle on the sidewalk.